welcome to Weapons of Meme Destruction Podcast, episode 218, which can be found at WMDpodcast.com/218. You can get the audio only on any podcast catcher. Just search Weapons of Meme Destruction. And you can get the video on YouTube, Rumble, Odyssey, and X. David, it looks like 218 might be our last one because if this election goes ass-shaped, first of all, we're already on lists. But if it doesn't go the way that we hope it does, which is basically any way other than Empress Cackles taking the reins of power, we're in big trouble in particular.
Well, all I've got to say is I think it should be a mandate in this country, not only in this country, but in England, and Great Britain to the lay person. But I think everyone should watch V for Vendetta one more time before they go out and vote. One more time. Just to get you back on track, to see how quickly shit can turn. But required reading, required watching, maybe we should do that. Instead of watching the results on Tuesday, Dane, maybe we should have a live stream of us just reacting to V for Vendetta, watching it together. You know, I think that's actually a really good idea, and I'll tell you why. Because I don't have too many of them, so please give me my kudos. with a lot of, cultural, what should I say, reference points and stuff like that. Yeah. People always unfailingly take the wrong lesson away from the story. So, for example, the big one that always comes to mind is all these dumbass white suburban women that vote in droves for Kamala. Easy, and we're trying to get more people over here. That particular group I don't much care for. Now, but if you happen to be a white woman that lives in suburbia, but you listen to this podcast, you'll soon realize that I'm not talking to or about you. But these are the below 30 IQ women who show up at polls and stuff like that in the what's like the red garb and the white cone hats. What is that story? Handmaid's Tale, right? Yeah. Because they think, right, they're going to live in some Christian theocracy if Trump wins and all of this kind of bullshit. And that, women's rights they're going to be second-class citizens and blah, blah, blah. The lesson of Handmaid's Tale is not that. It's not that, a Christian theocracy takes over. The lesson of the Handmaid's Tale is it's a dystopian society created by central planners that tried to, predict everything that happens in the world. And what they did is they created a massive fertility collapse. And so the reason why the Christian theocracy takes power is to force women to have women that are capable of having babies to have babies, because the vast swath of humanity is now infertile because they've polluted the environment and all this kind of stuff. The second lesson of Handmaid's Tale is make sure you always keep your guns, because everybody's disarmed, so you can't really do anything about it. So when this evil Christian theocracy takes over, you're left defenseless. So what you're saying is, this is my rifle, this is my gun, this is for fighting, this is for fun. Exactly. You could have just summed it up. You could have just summed it up just like that. You got to pull your cut every time you say gun. But use your fun rifle to make more babies, because it's not like we're not actually in open population collapse. It's a gun. If this is my rifle, this is my gun. Yeah. I know, that's what I'm saying. Use your fun gun to make more babies. Okay, you said fun rifle. You said fun rifle. You fucked it up. Sometimes I think faster than I speak. We'll get on the second take. But anyway, so true to form for V for Vendetta, the reason why I bring that up is because everybody is going to... Spoiler alert, by the way, I haven't even watched Handmaid's Tale, and now I know the whole goddamn story, thanks to Dane. Yeah, you're welcome. Unbelievable. Listen, it's past the statute of limitations on that. If you don't know yet, I can't be blamed for spoilers. I can't really hold you to that. And then obviously the takeaway, what are they going to take away from V for Vendetta, is that the evil people are coming for the gays. That's the only lesson they're going to learn in that whole damn movie. Well, if they want to. But basically, I just like that line where when he takes over, again, not giving too much away, but he takes over a national broadcast, and he says, when you're looking for the guilty, yes, there are those that played a hand, and I'll hold them responsible. But if you're looking for the guilty party, all you need to do is look in the mirror. You get the leadership that you deserve. And unfortunately, we've been so asleep at the wheel for so long. And then again, he explains it. I know why you did it. You were afraid. Who wouldn't be? War, terror, famine, disease. It was all over the place. They told you that was happening. So you played right into their hand, but
now I'm going to go fix it. But unfortunately, we live in reality, not a Coen Brothers movie. Or not a Coen. Who was it? The Wachowski, and then one of them. The same ones that made The Matrix, right?
I don't know if that's who made V for Vendetta. I'm not sure, but
I'll check it later. But put it this way: the directors put it pretty bluntly, is that you want to blame your neighbor. Look at yourself. It's way easier to point your finger at the other person, which is what we've seen now. It's rife nowadays. Like you're gonna vote for him. He's detestable, and then you're gonna vote for her. She's doesn't have a brain. It's like, yeah, but it's our fault that we let these candidates in there because we've been asleep at the wheel for so long that we've let this happen to us. Is basically what I'm saying.
And the only friendly amendment I'll say, it's not the sane spacer's fault, okay? We've been doing our part. We've been bearing the slings and arrows and YouTube strikes
of outrageous fortune
to try to get the message out there, and I'll be damned if they're not letting us.
All 10 of you are doing great. Keep spreading the word.
But anyway, what we wanted to do is because this idea came to me earlier this week as we close in. This is our last, obviously, episode before the election. And earlier this week, I had a friend ask me, because he's, libertarian, vote for Libertarian Party kind of guy. And he asked me who I voted for. And I said, well, I don't know if this says more about me or more about the state of the world, but for the first time ever, I am voting for a major party candidate, and it's clearly not Empress Cackles. So it's obviously Donald Trump. And he was surprised by that. He didn't disown me, didn't say that we're no longer friends. But he's like, well, that's interesting. Do you have a particular episode that talks about why? And I was like, well, not explicitly. We did talk about a few episodes back when Trump addressed the Libertarian Party, that was kind of a big deal for libertarians in terms of platforming our ideas. And that was important. And we kind of hinted around why that was a good thing. I still wasn't decided then that I personally was going to vote for the orange Mussolini, but things have transpired since then, including 2 assassination attempts. And so I have been more strengthened in my resolve for why I did throw my weight on the side of Trump. And so just to be completely candid with everybody in the sane space, and I hope some of you don't leave over it, we're just going to use this episode to kind of explain why and see what your thoughts are. David?
Well, I wanted to have this conversation with you for a while now. Like, what the fuck are we going to do? And it kind of just fell into our lap, and I'm glad that your friend finally got in your ear, because apparently your co-host can't. But
well, anyway, I didn't decide until like 48, fully decide till like 48 hours before I actually walked in the booth. So it's not even like I was in a place to discuss it before then.
And I have a feeling, and correct me if I'm wrong, is that the reason that I'm hesitant still to walk in the booth and pull that lever for Homeboy is it just feels like they've won. It feels like they've beaten us down. Like they've beaten us back into the 2-party system. Like they've just made it so fucking intolerable, or made the stakes so high that you can't vote for the third party this time. And like I said, I still haven't pulled the lever. I still haven't gone in. But I am leaning very heavily towards, like I said, Homeboy. Because, I mean, if you vote for, again, I kind of have to use their rhetoric. I think the whole reason that I have to vote for him is the whole reason that everyone's voting for her.
Lesser of two evils.
It's simply because he's not her.
Yeah.
And that's all it is. And the whole reason that I'm voting for him and not her is because I've watched the past 4 years completely. I didn't know. And I mean, they always say that about Rome, how it doesn't take very long for an emperor or an empire to fall. I mean, no, but it does take some amount of indignation for it to fall. Like, you just have to not want to see your own faults hard enough to where you just plow through it. Like, they're still screaming about January 6th when they started it with the Russiagate, with he was a Manchurian candidate for, and they'll never admit it. And the whole reason, I guess, what it all boils down to for me and for being a part of this podcast and for being American at the end of the day is that she's literally said free speech is on trial here. And for a podcast like us, we need that free speech because we don't just buy the party line. We don't just eat it and spew it out like it's the God's honest truth. We need free speech. If she gets her way, she's made it abundantly clear that she wants to bestow rules and regs, as they call it in the business, upon X. She said that they've had too much freedom for too long. In the same time that Mark Zuckerberg, who I believe, didn't you just say that Jimmy Kimmel came out on one of the nights this week?
Within a couple days ago, yeah.
With one of the nights this week, and said, if you're voting for Trump, make sure you show up on Thursday this week.
Yeah.
On November 7th. I believe there was a young political memer, political
operative
memer
in the meme war of 2016
that said, if you wanted to vote for Hillary, just text this number. And he got thrown in jail for 7 years. And his audience wasn't near as big as Jimmy Kimmel's. And I haven't heard a peep from him getting thrown into jail. And again, it's I mean, you've got an 8-point system. I won't diatribe too long. I'll let you get into the points, and we can expand upon them there. But I guess what it really boils down to here is that it's whether or not you believe in the Constitution this election, or whether or not you want to win, despite it. And I think there's only one side here that's actually playing by the rules and actually following what is supposed to happen, not necessarily to a T, obviously showing up in a garbage truck with an orange reflective vest on when you have orange reflective skin was not the best choice for ensemble when you're trying to drive the point home. But again, I just think it's a vote between the Constitution and ideology in this election, and the ideology has gotten way too out of hand for those two to coalesce, the Constitution and that ideology, anymore. So that's what I'm voting for. I'm voting for specifically people that follow the Constitution and those that chose not to during this last election cycle.
Yeah, and I mean, let's not give Trump a pass. No. He is, famous in his last administration for saying, I'm a big fan of taking the guns first, due process second. So that's not exactly constitutionally sound with the Second Amendment. He has done many things that are objectionable from a constitutional libertarian standpoint. And so, a vote for him is not a full-throated endorsement of everything he is and what he stands for. For me, and then we'll get into the 8 points. It really, if I could overarching sum up the full 8 points, is his actions at this point, and actions are important, as we've talked about on this podcast many, many, many times. People can say all they want. They can have all the flowery rhetoric in the world, but their actions tell you their true intentions. Or one of the other, favorite sayings that I heard recently from Orrin McIntyre is, the point of a system is what it does. So if you're wondering why the regime has X, Y, and Z results, and they seem to be, putting Americans second or much further, behind their primary interests in Ukraine and war and all that other kind of stuff, is the system is intended for that purpose. And so tracking back to Donald Trump and his actions within this campaign is the biggest question for me with him, because, candidate Trump in 2016 sounded really good, hating neocons, taking down both the Bush and Clinton families at the same time. Like, for that alone, America owes him a debt of gratitude for ending those two political dynasties. But, he still picked the John Boltons and the Mike Pompeos and put terrible neocons, terrible deep state apparatchiks all throughout his administration. And the good things of candidate Trump were stunted in terms of what actually came out of his administration because of that. So I wanted to hear from him. I wanted to see from him that he learned the lesson that in the process of, quote unquote, draining the swamp, you cannot employ swamp creatures. You cannot trust these career politicians and bureaucrats that are nothing but parasites and leeches on American society and global humanity as a whole, to do anything, to instill or support any of your policies that are directly against the systems that they have built and created. And when you see people like RFK Jr. and Tulsi Gabbard and Elon Musk and these people that the establishment vehemently hates as much, if not more than they hate Donald Trump himself, when he's putting all of those people in his orbit, he is, through his actions, I don't care what the words he uses, through his actions, he is making it plainly clear and obvious. I don't trust the establishment people because I tried to play nice with them the first time and all I wound up with it was, 2 assassination attempts. So now I'm going to set in my own crew who's going to pick their own people, and it's not going to have anybody that has had anything to do with DC for all these years. And again, if he follows through on those actions, that alone will make him the best president of our lifetimes. If he puts Elon Musk in there to gut the federal bureaucracy the way he gutted Twitter, cutting 80% of the employees, and yet it runs better than it ever did with a lot less child porn, I think that the federal government is going to be that much better for it. Even just Elon, not even focusing on what RFK can do from a health standpoint, what Tulsi Gabbard can do from a foreign policy standpoint, et cetera, et cetera. So that's kind of the overarching, if I had to cliff note the full 8 points, is his actions are showing me that he learned his lessons from his first administration and that he's putting in people that are not going to be the same neocon deep state apparatchiks he had around in the first time.
If you listen to the JRE that he was on, he said that. He discussed that. He's like, when I went in the first time, there's thousands of positions to fill. So and what happens is you fill it with somebody that you've heard of, or that was, a person that I trusted said to put Bolton. He used as an example. Yeah. He said, I put Bolton in there because somebody told me that I trusted, or somebody that I trusted told me that he's the right man for the job. Well, I listened to him, and then guess what? Bolton fucked me. So I'm not going to do that shit again. So I realized that all these people that had been there for a while, all of a sudden they weren't buying the same party line that I was. So that's why he fired so many people that he was doing. And he explained that away. But to that point too, I guess I'll say that he conducted himself for 3 hours on the podcast, and he brought it up, and I was thinking of the same thing because I remember my more liberal-minded friends are telling me that, oh, did you hear? Harris is going on the JRE or Joe Rogan Experience. Did you hear about that? I was like, no, that's news to me. And I knew right when they said it that it was absolute bullshit. She's never going to do that. You want to know why? Because one, Joe Rogan has, what's that called, Dane? Integrity. He has integrity. He's not going to let them walk in and go, oh, these are the questions you're going to ask her. You're going to softball it in there. It's going to be a tight 30-minute turnaround. And you're going to, no, he doesn't do that shit. He's got the biggest platform, and you play by his rules when you go on there, not your rules. So, and then he even discussed it a little bit on the podcast with Trump. He's like, I was in talks with their people. I wanted her to come in. He's like, I would come in at 3 a.m. if that's what worked for her schedule. But she was too busy, and they wanted me to fly out to meet her. And then you could already see the machinations. Who was the guy on Fox that interviewed her? He was telling...
Yeah, Brett Baer or whatever.
Thank you, yeah. Well, he was saying all this kind of cheesy shit they did right before the interview. It was supposed to be an hour-long interview that they cut down, and then all of a sudden she was late, and all of a sudden he couldn't ask this question. Then all of a sudden the producers, her handlers were saying, wrap it up, and it just completely got forcocked. Whereas with Joe Rogan, he's not going to let that happen. He runs that show. So she couldn't pull that shit off. And then Donald even said it during, could you imagine Harris doing this podcast? She'd be on the floor. She'd be dead. Yeah. She wouldn't have, and he was saying it, and you could tell that he would jump into political, and then he'd jump back out and talk Joe Rogan fighting, and then he'd jump back out into the political and do all that stuff. But you could see it too. She can't execute that shit. She couldn't pull that shit off. Yeah. She can't talk for 3 hours. You want to know why? Because she doesn't have 3 hours worth of material in her head.
No, she doesn't.
That's so again, and I guess my final point, or not my final point, because we've got plenty of stuff to discuss. But I guess another point to my pickle about potentially pulling the lever for Trump is what the fuck have the Libertarian Party been doing? Like, if you've had 2 cycles where you could have made some serious fucking headway, it was these 2 last election cycles.
3. 2016 should have been a lot better too. Yeah.
Right. I mean, I was being generous.
All we got out of that was what was Aleppo. That's all we got out of 2016.
Right. So, like, if you want to be taken seriously, you got to start putting some effort in, man. You can't just keep going with the same old textbook bullshit and sticking by the rules, because it ain't going to work. You got to get some fucking, I mean, somebody with some panache. And I just learned the name of the candidate for the Libertarian Party a couple of weeks ago.
Yeah, because he's a total non-factor.
Yeah, it's like, guys, if you see an opportunity, you got to seize it, like fucking Trump did. If Trump pursued the 2016 election like the Libertarian Party, we wouldn't be talking about him today.
Yeah.
He would have been gone the first fucking debate.
Yeah.
Kind of like Kamala Harris was in her first debate.
Yeah.
But, whatever.
Well, listen, I mean, if the Libertarian Party was worth its salt, which, the leadership it's the hangers-on that are quote unquote libertarian in name only. They're the ones that, voted for a Chase Oliver to be at the top of the ticket. They're the ones that are fighting tooth and nail the Mises Caucus to prevent them from restoring libertarianism to the Libertarian Party. So, that is a lost cause. And we'll kind of weave in and out of, Libertarian Party, inside baseball throughout this 8-point list. But, suffice it to say that if they were worth their salt, they would have been doing in 2016 what Trump has done with this campaign. They would have been reaching out to an Elon, and they would have been saying like, hey, listen, we know you're kind of a disaffected liberal. Like, you see yourself as a more liberal than conservative sort of guy. But, they've called you everything, up to and including the Nazi, white supremacist, et cetera, just because, you're doggedly in favor of free speech and all that kind of stuff. Why don't you come on over, lend your name, maybe some money, any credibility that you have within the, technological space to the LP. And, we actually want to, lean on you to be an advisor in some of those spaces that you specialize in, and they could have done the same thing with Tulsi when, she was run out of the Democrat Party for going against Hillary. They could have been doing all of this, but it took Donald Trump doing it. And the reason why he did it is he knows that the margin of victory on this election needs to outpace the margin of fraud. He needs to win by so many points that they can't possibly cheat to steal it, because if they tried, it would be way too obvious. This can't be we're going to win by a 0.5 percentage point and, maybe a handful of the swing states while we lose some of the others. Like, he needs to wipe the floor with them, and he knows it. That's why he spent so much time reaching out to some of these smaller, in terms of political numbers, like libertarians, but, building this coalition, of sometimes even non-political groups of people that are just completely disaffected and feel like they don't have a home. And maybe they still won't have a home with the Trump administration. But the point is, he's trying. And the last time I checked, if you were going to have a functional democracy, the people that are leading it can't completely ignore their voters, or else what the fuck are we doing here? If you're completely ignoring the people that are supposed to be the genesis of all of your power, then where's your power really coming from? It's coming from somewhere deeper and darker than just people at the ballot box. So if you were just going to wipe your ass with an entire half of the country, as the Democrat Party basically does, treats anybody that's even remotely, tangent to the MAGA movement as this sort of unwashed masses that don't get a say in anything, then you're not really, acting in a democratic manner, because you're not, engaging with the will of the people on the mass scale. At least Trump is hearing them out and saying, all right, I may not be libertarian, but, you got a point with this Bitcoin, or you got a point with that. Come on in and I'll free Ross Ulbricht day one, right? One of the pet projects of the LP. And if he does that, that will have accomplished more than the entire LP has done in 50 years. So that's a step in the right direction.
Well, and then again, it shouldn't be lost on the American people, and it shouldn't be lost on what little viewership we have, that what kind of moral leadership, someone that's educated, someone that believes in the country that they're leading, insults people that just have a different viewpoint? They call them degenerates. They call them garbage. They call them every name under the sun, deplorables. Like
white supremacists, Nazis, bigots, racists. Yeah, we could go down the list for a while.
Sure. That's cool. But if you're the smart party, which they regard themselves as the educated smart party, what educated person punches down? What moral person punches down? What moral person doesn't look at their own faults and admit that they've made some mistakes? None of them. They feign morality so that they have the upper hand. But there's only one side that has had their candidate shot at twice. There's only one side that's trying to manipulate the population into giving away their rights for free speech. There's only one side that demonizes the other side. Like, I don't know where else to go from here. There's one side that says that the other side has billionaires, yet BlackRock, Vanguard, and the fucking Sith Lord Dick Cheney is supporting them. Like, they say things that don't match up with any of the things that they hold true and dear to their hearts. We, in 2020, were on the verge of pulling out of a 20-year war. Within the span of 4 years, I don't think there was an active war zone when Donald Trump was pulling out.
No, there were active war zones. He didn't start any new ones.
Correct.
They were still ongoing. Yeah, he just didn't start anything new.
But he didn't start anything new, and he pulled us out of the one that was the biggest. I mean, it was bleeding our country dry, but the biggest war that we had for 20 years, that was one of our biggest mistakes since fucking Vietnam. So it might have been our generation's Vietnam. So we hadn't started any new wars. And in 4 years, we are entrenched in 2 proxy wars and on the verge of World War III with the side that is supposedly against war. Again, you said it before, we'll say it again. Even if you're just voting on, which is what you should be doing, really, you should be voting on track record. We were almost out of every war, and now we're on the verge of World War III. And like Albert Einstein said, I don't know what weaponry World War III will be fought with, but I can guarantee it. I added a little bit there. World War IV will be fought with sticks and stones. And that's where we're at now.
If there's any of us left, for sure.
By the way, with all this coverage of Trump, they haven't had any time to mention the fact that North Korea has given troops to Russia, that we discussed last week. Things hopping up over there. They haven't discussed the fact that Iran was shooting fucking more missiles into, or not Iran, excuse me. Hamas was shooting more missiles into Israel.
Israel is directly striking Iran. Yeah.
Didn't mention it once.
No
all
time.
All they could talk about was Trump. So, okay, even wipe it all free. These guys are so caught up on Trump, they can't even run the country. They can't even do foreign policy. They can't even mention anything else other than Orange Man. So they're not fit for purpose anymore.
Yeah.
You aren't fit for purpose. And voting them out, maybe they should look at their own ass first. Yeah. And really, really, really come to terms with the fact that the Democratic Party is not the Democratic Party of 2000 anymore. It's gone somewhere else.
Certainly not. I mean, if they've moved so far away that they have lost one of the most stalwart names of their entire, political movement in terms of the Kennedy name. I mean, I know many of his family are still, devoutly Democratic and have even disowned their own family member for a political party, which is just disgusting and abhorrent in its own right. But the point is, if they've run RFK, the namesake of Jack and Bobby, out of the party, that should tell you something about where the party currently stands today.
Wherever families start is not where they end up. Remember that.
Yeah.
Because those people haven't done shit, but they're more than willing to use their family name to cling on to power.
Yeah.
And that's why and what kind of family disavows the namesake of one of their family members that was assassinated?
Mm-hmm.
Look at the Kennedys now. Look at Clinton. How did the Clintons fared over the past couple of years? They would have fared a lot worse if the fucking Republicans would have got in, because that list of Epstein Island might have got out a little bit quicker. But yeah, it's time to let old epitaphs of this world, of this country, fall by the wayside. You don't still see the Lincoln family around the White House, do you? No, it's time to drop that shit off back where it should have stayed. And now it's time to move forward, because all this has been regression for the past 4 years. That's all I got to say.
Yeah. So I lied to you, David. It's actually 9 because I can't count. I put the number 8 twice. But anyway, let's just start with the end of the list, but I'm going to put it up front because, you had concerns of conscience for, being pushed into by hook or by crook into the duopoly by voting for the lesser of two evils. So let me just start with the last point, which is the practical point. And the practical point, and this is true regardless of how it makes you feel, if you're one of these, democracy is sacred people. And the practical point is, no matter where you live, even a swing state, your vote does not matter. From a purely statistical standpoint, an individual vote will have absolutely zero impact on any election. You would need an infinitesimally small likelihood of everybody is exactly 50%, and then your vote is the deciding vote in order to swing an election. And then you would have to be in a swing state. You'd have to be in a close enough called county in that swing state. And, just the statistical probability of your vote mattering in a real sense of deciding the election is less than zero. So, let that first allay your fears, David, is that your vote really has no impact on the election. But it has for the other points in the list that I'm going to get into for why it's important.
Is AOC going to collect a list of who voted for who now and reveal that, which is supposed to be, Yeah. Am I going to be strung up on my toes if I vote for the wrong person this time?
Yeah. And you should be really worried about her because according to, limp-wristed Tampon Tim. She knows how to run a mean pick six, Tampon David.
Tim. A pick six?
Did you hear about this?
No.
You're digressing me, but I can't not do it.
Sorry.
So
We're here to digress.
She got on a live stream last week or 2 weeks ago with Tim Walz, and they played Madden. And Walz, who is, famous for, he was a high school coach. And
what a fucking stunt, by the way. What a fucking stunt.
As a high school teacher, he was allegedly a football coach. But anyway, he took a screenshot of them playing Madden, and he put on his tweet on it that AOC runs a mean pick six, as if a pick six is a play.
Is it a play?
On defense?
Is it a play?
Or is it offense? He didn't even specify.
Oh, man. Okay, so the guy said that he was on deployment.
I knew I shouldn't have brought this
The guy
up.
said that he was this. The guy said that it was that. And then he can't even come. Was he even really a fucking football coach?
That's the point.
What the fuck, dude? Like, she said she worked for McDonald's. McDonald's, the huge, gigantic corporate conglomerate, can't find her anywhere in the system. But she was there, by God. And he served in fucking Iraq or Afghanistan or wherever the fuck he stole his valor from. And they came out and said no. And he's like, well, I'm a bit of a knucklehead sometimes, and I steal valor. Like, from the same side of the... I'm gonna calm down. From the same side that continually tells us that generals talk shit on Trump, but if you talk to a military deployed... shit, what am I trying to say? Warfighter. Personnel, sure, anybody. They'll tell you that Obama sucked cock during the Iraq war because of the rules of engagement. And they actually liked Trump because he dropped a bunch of that shit and said, just get the job done. There's two sides to every coin, but well, these general, and he said those General Milley is a piece of poop. I think I'm paraphrasing on the JRE, but he was talking shit on Milley. And again, it's like, you've got a whole conglomerate over here that was actually there saying Obama sucked, And Trump kind of got us what we needed. And then you turn around and go, well, you've got another contingent that says all the paid people in the military that have pomp and arrogance are agreeing with us, i.e. the Democrats. So I don't know. I just trust the people that were there, that were ground pounding, more than I trust anything that comes out. And again, why do we not trust them, Dane? Why do we not trust the left?
30 plus years of lived experience. I mean, I don't know.
but more acute, more acute than that. 4 years of them telling you everything that you want to do, you should feel bad about. And everything you don't believe you should do is the right thing to do.
Or, I mean, even more fundamental than that, telling you that your eyes and ears are lying to you.
And then all of a sudden they aren't. And it comes out that they were lying to you. And then none of them get held accountable.
Ever. So
I'm done.
rounding out that, our vote doesn't matter point. We don't live in the same county in Florida, but Florida up until, recently was a swing state. It was pretty purple. Usually with the blue counties here in the Southeast that would swing it blue sometimes against, the will of the more central and northern Florida people. But, since Ron DeSantis, Florida is heavily red. So it's not, our votes aren't really going to change that outcome one way or the other. But since we do live in those blue counties, and it's important, kind of like I alluded to earlier, that Trump win by as wide of a margin as possible, our little drop in the bucket and are probably still going to go blue counties that make it not such a landslide for Democrats, down here in Southeast Florida, just kind of goes towards that extent of widening the gap. Right. And so on the margins, as little of an impact as that makes in the overall election, that's why it made sense for me to take the precious minutes or hours out of my day to go down to the voting booth and do it, because I want my vote to be a rebuke of everything that the other side stands for, because it is egregious, the things that they have done, not only in this last 4 years, but everything that they say they want to do. We're talking, price controls, $25,000 to first-time home buyers, if that's not going to explode the cost of home ownership,
controlling the price of groceries.
Right, exactly.
All those communistic Marxist ideas that.
So for all of those reasons, that's why, even though it doesn't really matter in the grand scheme, it's important that for me, that's why I decided that it was worthwhile to vote for Trump in this instance. And so since we're kind of been long on the tooth leading up to the list, I'm going to run a few of these together because, there's not a ton that needs to be said on each one of them individually. But yes, just three right off the list. I'm voting for Trump on his foreign policy, his immigration, and his domestic policy. His foreign policy, checkmark Tulsi Gabbard. If she is going to have a substantial amount of say, not only in terms of who he selects for his administration on foreign policy, I trust her more than anybody else, including Donald Trump himself, to get those personnel choices correct.
Yep.
Immigration, I mean, that's, we alluded to this when we talked about the gang takeover of the apartment complexes in Aurora, Colorado. If you import millions and millions of people, not that they are bad people, not that they didn't come from a shitty situation, not that they don't deserve to be as free as any other human being, but the fact that not being Americans, not growing up through primary school and learning about the founding fathers and learning about the principles of the Constitution and learning about why free speech is critical and why the Second Amendment is about self-defense and not about guns in particular. And just all of those things that are imbued in you because of the culture that you were raised and grew up in. Of course, those things are not going to matter to those people when and if they get the chance to vote, which if you leave it up to the Biden administration, is sooner rather than later. So when their opinion or when their voices are expressed at the ballot box, that is anti-American in terms of voting for the Democratic Party, because that's who imported all of them, that's going to be a problem for native-born Americans, regardless of what the native-born Americans happen to be. Black, white, Asian, doesn't matter. If you don't share the culture, then you're going to have no affinity for it. You don't care what happens to the country as long as you get yours. That's why immigration is important. And based on that, as Trump is going to deport millions and all of that kind of stuff, which some will say is not a libertarian position. That's a whole nother discussion that we could spend an entire episode on. I would support him over that. And then to round out this like group of three, and then I'll turn it over to you, David, to talk about it, is his domestic policy. So things like taxation, when he's floating the idea of eliminating the income tax. Now, I'm not so naive to think that he could accomplish that, but the fact that he is platforming that idea, he talked about it on Joe Rogan, that the United States, comparatively speaking to the rest of the world, was the richest it had ever been before or since in the late 1800s, before the institution of the income tax. He puts a little too much credit to tariffs, but the point is we became the wealthiest, most powerful nation on the face of the planet without stealing 30% of every working American's paycheck. That's a big idea to platform. And the fact that he's doing it, even if he's not able to accomplish elimination of the income tax, talking about it at his level is amazing for a liberty direction of the country. I'm going to show a tweet for you here real quick. This is him talking about Bitcoin just the other day. No other major party candidate is even going to hint at the idea that Bitcoin should be legal tender or compete with US dollars in any way, shape, or form. And if you see that hashtag there at the bottom, Free Ross Day One, he's talking about Ross Ulbricht, which again came out of his contacts with the Libertarian Party. So whether it's taxation, crypto, Ross Ulbricht, or his promise to the libertarians at the LP convention that he is actually going to put some libertarians in his cabinet, that's massive.
Well, all
the
this
party
does,
itself would have never accomplished
all
that.
This does, Dan, is show that he's listening to people.
Correct.
He's not just saying things that I don't think I'll tax tips anymore. No, he didn't just come with that with divine intervention. He came up with it because he thought that it would help out the normal working person. What does he do? He sits down, he talks to people. He's willing to go to the Libertarian Party. He's willing to go to the caucus of this, whatever the fuck it is. He's willing to go out and listen to people. And that's, if you've ever listened to anybody that's ever talked to him privately, that's what they say. He listens. Do you think in a million years, Gavin Newsom, fuck Harris, Gavin Newsom would come out and say, hey, I want to ease up the taxes on this state. I want you guys to make more money. I want you to keep more money and dictate to yourselves what you think you should be spending your money on. Do you think he's ever going to come out and say that? No, because his position is captured. It's again, bring it back to Biden, who hasn't been mentioned this entire time. What's Biden been doing for the last 4 months that he hasn't been the incumbent candidate running for presidency? Torpedoing Harris?
The Harris campaign? Yeah.
Accidentally, maybe, but probably
who knows,
kind of on purpose. Right, exactly. It's so if he's so, and then we now admit from the same people that brought you that his age was his superpower, bring you now that Kamala is amazing. Well, why is she amazing? She's just amazing. And if you question us, you're a bigot and you're a misogynist. Said by, I said that in a Cali girl accent, but it was actually said by our former president, Barack Obama, to black men for not supporting their black sister. They didn't take well to that at all.
Yeah.
By the way. Again, every time they come out, it seems like they just tell you more and more they've lost touch with reality and lost touch with the American people, and they aren't interested in it because there's somebody paying them a lot more money on the back end, which is dictated, or which leads me back to my weaving thing that Donald Trump was saying, was that who's been running the country for the last 4 months? If we all admit that Joe Biden is mentally
unfit to even run for office.
Correct. And Miss Harris has been running to win that office. So who's pulling the who's at the driving wheel? Who's at the steering wheel? The people that bought it. Put it that way.
For sure. The people that bought it and the career unelected bureaucrats that we're always complaining about. That is the swamp. It's these people whose names never show up on a ballot, but through whether it be through regulation, whether it be good old fashioned fraud and coercion, to get the elected officials to do their bidding. These people are the ones that run the show. This is why the American people, I've said this a million times, the American people have a demonstrated, and I'm talking of cross-party lines, they have a demonstrated desire, will, if you want to call it, the will of the people, to be less bellicose in I'll just use one, platform piece and foreign policy. Repeatedly, over and over again, they elected George W. Bush over Gore because George W. Bush talked about compassionate conservatism. He wanted to get away from running around the world, being the world police, and he was rebuking the Clintons getting involved in Bosnia and Kosovo. The American people voted for George W. Bush. And then when it came to Obama in 2008, they voted for him over John McCain because Obama was hope and change. And hope and change, why? In particular, a rebuke to the George W. Bush wars. And then Donald Trump comes in clearly more dovish on foreign policy than any of the Republican candidates, and definitely more than Hillary Clinton. And who do the people elect against all of the experts, prognostications? Donald Trump. So again and again and again, on the rhetoric of the campaigns, the American people always vote for the least bellicose, most dovish, least foreign interventionist candidate. And every single time, this is the old Tom Woods adage, no matter who you elect, you get John McCain. Every single time their elected candidate gets into the office and the regime rolls on. The wars continue, the money printing continues, and the will of the people in terms of being less, engaged in wars around the world is never expressed. And the reason why that phenomenon happens, is these career unelected bureaucrats, these people that never show up on a ballot, but they control all of these alphabet agencies in DC. And then as administrations come and go, nothing ever changes. And that is exactly the way they want it. And that actually kind of segues into the next grouping of three that I was going to get to. And this is actually maybe the biggest point that I make, in favor of Donald Trump when people ask me, how could you vote for him? It's as simple as this. The regime hates him. All of the worst people in the world. You have the Cheney crime family, the Bush crime family, the Clinton crime family, the Bidens, the Harrises, the Obamas. Everybody is coalescing around Kamala Harris. Why? Because Donald Trump is uncontrollable. Not even in the sense that maybe they have dirt on him, but in the sense that they never know what the next thing is going to come out of his mouth. They never know when he's going to say, yeah, that Iraq war was pretty stupid. We shouldn't have done that. Or, maybe it doesn't make sense for the United States to be, shelling out money all around the world in terms of, foreign aid when we have people starving here at home. They don't want candidates, let alone people elected to office saying that, because the regime depends upon you being dependent upon it and you just going along to get along. So that's why they hate the First Amendment and they want censorship. That's why they want to take the guns every time something bad happens. That's why they engage in lawfare when they don't get their way. And a vote for Trump is a rebuke of all of that. Basically, they hate him because he ain't him.
Exactly.
And so if on that alone is that his name is a rebuke to them and everything they stand for, and if they're that terrified of him, that's reason enough to vote for
all the right people are terrified of him. Is
correct.
What you're basically saying.
The worst people in the world hate him.
Well, just to harken on to your point there, we can move on to the next grouping. I almost spit took this week because I was talking to an MSNBCer, and I don't know if you were paying attention to the news this week, but apparently I was told that somebody at the Trump rally on Sunday talked a bunch of shit on Puerto Ricans and said some really racist shit that made him look really bad. And I was like, oh, fuck. Was it a governor? Was it a mayor? Was it like some kind of backer of the Republican Party? Found out the day after I was told about all the racist shit about Puerto Ricans that it was Tony fucking Hinchcliffe, a goddamn comedian, going up and doing what comedians do, making fun of people. And they made it sound like he was a forefront or a real cosmonaut in the efforts of Republican diatribe. It's like, he's a comedian. He came out and he played his part with people that weren't there for comedy. Okay, you missed your fire. Yeah, you shouldn't have had him on. Big whoop. Want to fight about it? No. Move on. It's a comedian that made some jokes that didn't hit. Move on.
And
but
by
they
the way,
made it sing. Go ahead.
Not just any comedian. Like, that's his brand. His brand is
Kill Tony.
As aggressive and
he was the
offensive as
star.
possible.
He was the star of the Tom Brady roast because he roasted Tom Brady fucking hard.
Yeah.
Like, that's his shtick. Like, okay, whatever. So skip past all that. Forget the context that surrounds it. Fuck all that. We have to say that he's racist now. It's like, okay, so you want to call that racist, but you saying black people aren't smart enough to find identification is the reason we can't have identification at voting polls anymore? That's super goddamn racist.
Yeah.
The racism of underwhelming expectations is racism, but they won't even stay on that anymore. So it's like you insulted your base, hardcore parkour, and you didn't mean it. He came out and just made fun of Puerto Ricans. As a comedian,
make fun of Puerto Ricans. He said that the country is basically a floating pile of trash, which, by the way, is not.
Biden hearkened on to it. Like, everybody that votes for Trump is garbage. Like, oh, well, then here we go. So,
which by the way,
does that make Biden racist? Is Biden racist anymore?
Which, by the way, if you just like Google, you're gonna have to go through like more than one page because Google has been inundated with headlines about Hinchcliffe's comments about it. But if you just go back a year or two, there were major news story headlines talking about the country of Puerto Rico, or the protectorate, the 51st state as far as Democrats are concerned, has a major trash problem because they can't dispose of all of the trash that's being created. So, like, the point of all good jokes, right, have a tinge of truth to them, and that's what makes them funny. Is, he said what he said because the mainstream media has been running articles for the past 2 or 3 years talking about this trash problem that exists in Puerto Rico. That's, if you didn't think the joke was funny, fine, but the point is that, he didn't just like make up that joke out of whole cloth because he hates Puerto Ricans or is racist in any way, any more than he is racist for any of the numerous other jokes that I'm sure if you watch 5 seconds of Kill Tony, you would, find everything else to be offended by. Basically, as far as Hinchcliffe goes, and this is not, we're not spinning this part of the segment to defend Tony Hinchcliffe. It's just pointing out the absurdity of the outrage over
they'll
him
onto
making
anything.
that joke. So.
That's my point. Is they'll grab onto anything to just make it the thing, but they're misrepresenting what it was. Like, you can't even. Yeah. You're disingenuous with everything. When you're trying to be genuine, you're disingenuous by having a genuine. We'll call it a genuine black president come out and tell all of the black males in the world. Or, excuse me, not in the world, but in America, if you don't vote for Harris, you're a misogynist. It's disingenuous.
Yeah.
Everything about you is about you being genuine, and you're blatantly disingenuous. So, again, you are the hypocrites of this election, and you deserve to lose thoroughly.
Yeah.
Thoroughly.
Which, I guess that doesn't necessarily bring me to my last kind of 2 points, but
force it together.
Yeah, it works. And
just
we've
like
kind of already
Harris on us.
Hinted around about this with the taxation, the crypto, the Ross Ulbricht stuff. But the last kind of point that I want to make for me specifically, for many people in the sane space that may identify as libertarians, is there is a clear and definitive libertarian influence on the Trump campaign, and for that, I will show you this. Is a tweet. So this is a series of tweets the last couple of weeks where Elon was talking about, because Elon's whole thing is like government efficiency is basically the entity that he's going to do. And then Ron Paul responded to him on X saying, hey, maybe you should start with the Federal Reserve. This has been Ron Paul's pet project for years and years and years, right? Is either, if not outright eliminating Fed, at least auditing it, showing the American people where all this created money is flowing to, and it's not to the betterment of the American people. And Elon Musk has been openly receptive on X to Ron Paul. And so what that is telling this is the libertarian wet dream of all wet dreams is Ron Paul has
if
a
your
legitimate
libertarian dick isn't harder than a rock right now, you aren't doing it right.
And by the way, for the audio only listeners, what I shared is a tweet from Ron Paul that just says "start cutting?" ? And he's replying to a tweet from Elon that Elon had created a meme called the Department of Government Efficiency, Doge, right? His full pet thing with the Doge cryptocurrency. And it's from the Office Space where Elon and Ron Paul are sitting there saying, what would you say you do
here?
That's basically what they're going to do to all the government agencies and employees and start axing them. And then Elon replied to Ron Paul's...
I've got people skills, for God's sake.
Elon replied to Ron Paul's
100%
question about start cutting with the 100% emoji. So
yeah.
What this means, what a vote for Trump means is it is a real and legitimate opportunity for libertarians to
hope and change
the granddaddy libertarian candidate of our lifetimes, Ron Paul, if not in the administration, advising the administration on personnel choices, rocks to look under to find some of the waste, fraud, and abuse. Libertarians for a very long time, present company included, have been writing in on their ballots for many elections, writing in Ron Paul and voting for him because they could not bear bringing themselves to vote for one of the two major party candidates. Well, now, although it's not Grandpa Ron himself on that ballot, we have a very real opportunity to have a Ron Paul influence on a presidential administration, and that comes with Donald Trump. So, after this list, I don't know if it's enough to... Because again, I will not revoke your libertarian card if you want to, stick to your guns and say, I just can't vote for any of the two major parties, blah, blah, blah.
And I still might.
But for me, all of these things together added up to the next step on the path in my lifetime to see as much liberty as possible for me and my children and future generations. The next best step, the biggest step that I've seen in my lifetime is a vote for Donald Trump in this election because of all the libertarian influence, not even just libertarian, but RFK and Tulsi and Elon and, the dream team list goes on and on, Ron Paul. For all of those reasons, it made sense to vote for the Don. So that's why I did it. Please don't hate me.
But Dane, I just wrote down poetic justice. How poetically justified is it that the party that says that they were running on hope and change, the actual hope and change in Washington comes from, he's a Republican, but he's completely outside of all of it.
Imagine that change comes from something outside of the apparatus.
What do we say all the time? Whatever the government says they're doing, they're actually doing the opposite. So when you want hope and change, when we're voting for Kamala Harris for hope and change, that's more of the same thing. Hope and change is actually voting for the guy that has orange skin, which is not normal.
That's very different. That's a big change.
It's out of the norm. But you don't get hope and change by voting for the same thing that ended you up where you started. Yeah. You get hope and change for voting for somebody that is outside of the apparatus. The apparatus actually hates him. And if he's thrown out by all those that have, who does he have to listen to? Those that don't have. Well, who are those that don't have anymore? It's most of America right now. So that's why I'm comfortable I'm probably going to throw my hat in his ring. Simply because the Libertarian Party couldn't make a fucking effort this election. But he made all of the effort this election cycle.
Yeah. He made all of the effort that they should have been doing for a long time.
He won my vote. I mean, this is a race. And in my opinion, he did the most with what he had. He still has fucking rallies. He still has rallies. When he got his fucking ear shot off and somebody got shot right behind him. Well, not ear shot off. He got a little nick, but same difference. Like, he got shot at And then he almost got shot at golfing again. And then supposedly there was a bomb. There were 3 attempts on his life. Kamala can't even be pulled out of her fucking bedroom to do a softball interview with another CNN reporter. She has to do her research, and then they have to have rules. And all I'm saying is, if you want a manufactured candidate, vote for Harris. If you want somebody that's obviously going against the grain and listening to you, which is so crazy nowadays, vote for Trump. And Libertarian, and for our sake, the Libertarian Party,
you got to do better.
Get your fucking shit together, you dipshits. Like, come on, man. This is the perfect time to have a Ross Perot or an Elon Musk or somebody. Just Jesus Christ. Like, and I know Trump, and I'll shut up after this because we got to end it. But I know Trump talked about the third party in the JRE podcast he did. And he said, it's a maelstrom out there. He said that it's not going to happen because Ross Perot fucked it up for everybody else. They can't have it anymore. Well, guess what? That's the old media. The old media is dying. The boomers are dying with it. They're going to vote for Kamala, which at this point, and that's what I wanted to do. Can I end this on for my part, can I end this on like a olive branch thing? Can I end this
Go for it.
Like, hey. All right. Come on in, Insane Space. Your job now. Vote for whoever you want. Cool. Libertarians didn't do their thing. Whatever. We didn't sell you on a candidate to vote for today. Whatever. What you can do as an American is, despite whether or not you vote for blue or red, and whether or not your neighbor votes for blue or red, just realize we're all on the same team, and we all did the right thing that we thought was right for the country at that given time. If you start losing respect for your neighbor because they voted differently, then they are winning, and I don't know what they are. But as a country, we need to come together and not disrespect each other because of our political viewpoints. We need to stay on the same team, which is America, and believe in what this country was founded on.
Unless you vote for Harris, in which case I have no respect for you. Just kidding. I'm kidding. I'm not breaking David's olive branch. I'm just kidding.
It's perfect. That was well timed, Dane. That was well timed comedic fodder. So anyway, with all that being said, let's just all start respecting each other, and then maybe our leadership will start reflecting us instead of the leadership reflecting upon us.
Yeah.
Just an idea. Just
or
a
the
thought,
worst
just
parts
a
of
careless
us.
thought.
Yeah.
Correct. So with all that being said, Dane, board up your shops, for God's sake, for the mostly peaceful protests that are going to happen after Donald J. Trump wins this next election.
Yeah.
And
let's hope we're all around for episode 219. I sure hope so.
Are we doing anything for the election, or are we just going to batten down our hatches and hold our candles together tight?
I would strongly discourage any potential looters or protesters or whatever the hell we want to call them from coming to my house. I'm not going to say why, other than it just probably won't end well for you. So with that being said,
he's got landmines.
With that being said, David, we can find, or the listeners, viewers, can find this episode at WMDpodcast.com/218. They can get the audio only on any podcast catcher. Just search Weapons of Meme Destruction. And they can get the video on YouTube, Rumble, Odyssey, and X. While you're at WMDpodcast.com, make sure to sign up for the email list. Check the Support Our Work tab to see how to, help support the show financially. But if you can't do any of that, I know times are tough and money's tight. Until Ron Paul can get in there and actually eliminate the Federal Reserve, in which case we'll all be doing a lot better.
What the fuck is this shit?
And when he does, we fully expect those donations to start rolling into the Weapons of Meme Destruction podcast, because we know you're all going to be better off.
Being taxed to death, you can give more shit to more people.
With that being said, if you can't do that, obviously just talking to friends and family about us, subscribing, sharing, commenting,
on all of the platforms that you find us on. All of that goes a long way to help growing the sane space. And we thank you for your efforts and your time. And with that being said, we hope to see you on the other side of this election on 2/19 with a slightly saner country. We know there's going to be a lot of people that lose their minds if it goes the way we want it to go. But hopefully with a slightly saner country on the way to a slightly saner world.
Well, with all that being said, Dane, I have candy at my house. If you want to come to my house for election night, come on over. I'm not going to give you my address. You're going to have to figure it out for yourself. Anyway, until next week, and if we do I guess if we do any special for their election night, we'll post it on our social media. So stay tuned for that.
Yes.
Otherwise, we're working our best, but behind the scenes, it's
promises.
Hard.
Both
of
us have infants at home, so
Correct.
we're going to try, but our lovely paramours may say otherwise.
Not to mention, I might be having to hold the gates off with fucking...
Yeah.
Anyway, not saying that I'll be peacefully holding the gates off. But until then, until 2/19?
Yes.
That's 2/19, right?
Yeah.
Jesus Christ. So that's going to be... The world might be burning by then. But by God, if we have a dystopian background by then, it is what it is.
Just know that it's mostly peaceful back there.
It is mostly peaceful. That fire back there is mostly peaceful. That nuke, mostly peaceful. But until then, guys, stay safe, but more importantly, stay free.